Enroll your child for the manifested e-learning platform and see their grades grow tremendously. These videos can be downloaded to a laptop for offline viewing or viewed from a smartphone in a cost-friendly format.
Hello learners, I'm back again to continue with the discussion of the topic food and nutrition under the subject science. Learners, welcome to the lesson. The subject is science. The topic is food and what? And nutrition. Food and nutrition. Food and nutrition. Food and nutrition. We are continuing with the topic food and nutrition. Now, learners, under this topic in our last lesson, we introduced the subtopic food preservation. We learned that food can become bad if it is attacked by germs. We learned that germs make the food to get spoiled or get rotten, and that rotten food is not good because it can cause diseases. Then we defined food preservation. Learners, we say that the process of storing and handling food properly so as to stop or to slow down spoilage is called food preservation. We also say that you can define food preservation as the process of preventing food from getting spoiled. We learned that some foods, such as animal products, can be preserved for a very short time, and other foods, such as grains, can be preserved for a long time. Then, learners, we gave the reasons for preserving food. And these reasons we said include, number one, to prevent food from getting spoiled or being spoiled. One reason why we preserve food is to prevent it from being spoiled. Number two, we learned that we preserve food to reduce food wastage when there is plenty. We learned that there are times in the year when there is food is in plenty, especially when during harvesting. So after harvesting food and homes have plenty of food, it's important to preserve the food so that that food can be used when there is scarcity. Then number three, we learned that we preserve food to allow the food to be transported from one place to another without going bad. We learned that there are people who plant food for the purpose of selling. Okay? Selling. So after harvesting food, then that food should be preserved so that it does not get spoiled before it's taken to the market. Then, learners, we also saw that seasonal foods are preserved so as to make them available when out of season. When the foods are out of season, learners, the food that were preserved when the foods were in season, then that food can be used for consumption. So learners, that's what we learned in our last lesson. In this lesson, we want to study the different methods of preserving food. Methods of preserving foods. And learners, in studying the methods of preserving food, we will classify these methods into two: the traditional methods and the modern methods. So learners, welcome to today's lesson. We want to learn about methods of preserving food. Methods of preserving food. And I've said the methods of preserving food can be classified into two. Can be classified into two. That is, one, the traditional methods, and two, the modern methods. So I want you to write down methods of preserving food can be classified into two: traditional methods and modern methods. We will first study the traditional methods. Traditional methods. So write down traditional methods. I want to write down traditional methods. So learners, what are these traditional methods of preserving food? Traditional methods of preserving food. Traditional methods of preserving food. Let me write of preserving food. Traditional methods of doing what? Of preserving food. What are these methods? Now, learners, these are methods that were used for preserving food in our communities. These are the old methods that were used, learners, in our communities for preserving food. These are the old methods. These are the old methods that were used in our communities for doing what? For preserving food. These were, I want you to write down, these were old methods that were used in our communities for preserving food. Old methods, because we have modern methods. Okay? Now, they include, learners, they include smoking, B, drying, C, salting, learners, salting. Then there was also use of honey. Use of what? Use of honey. And E, use of ashes. Use of what? Use of ashes. Learners, these are the traditional methods. You see, our ancestors were very clever, learners. They devised ways of doing what? Of preserving food. And they had several methods. They didn't have one. They had several methods. That means they were rich in knowledge on the methods of preserving food. They had knowledge. They knew that you can preserve food through smoking, through drying, through salting, through use of honey, through use of ashes. So learners, we are going to discuss all these methods one by one. One by one. So I'll begin with smoking. 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 Now, learners, smoking is a method of preserving food using smoke from firewood. Smoking, I want you to write down, smoking is a method of preserving food using what? Firewood. Using firewood. Learners, food can be preserved by smoking. Okay, and the food that can be preserved by smoking include meat, fish, and grains such as maize, sorghum, millet, and so on. So learners, smoking. That smoke that is produced from firewood contains substances, learners, that kill the germs that make the food go bad. Remember in our last lesson we said that the reason why food go bad or get spoiled or get rotten is because this food is attacked by germs. So our ancestors, learners, those who are older than us, they knew that if you expose the food to smoke, that smoke will do what? Will kill the germs that attack food. That smoke kills the germs. And again, learners, that smoke forms a coat around the food, something like soot, that prevents entry of germs. Those who've been to houses where firewood is used to cook food, all right, there are some houses or homes where firewood is used in preparation of food. Now, if you look at this, the roof of the house, learners, you see the smoke forms a layer on the roof. We call it soot, black. So the same thing will happen, learners, if you expose smoke to foods like maize, like sorghum, like meat, like fish. So that coating, that layer that is formed on the food prevents entry of germs into the food. Germs cannot get in. And if germs cannot get into the food, then that food cannot go bad, because we learned that food gets spoiled because of being attacked by germs. So learners, you see, our ancestors knew that and they applied that knowledge in preserving food. So smoking is a method of preserving food using firewood. And let me write, foods that can be preserved by smoking include foods that can be preserved by smoke include, I mentioned meat, I mentioned fish, I mentioned maize, I mentioned sorghum, and the list goes on and on. Grains, these are grains, and this is meat. So please write down. So, and we can also say the smoke, you can say the smoke contains, learners, substances that kill germs. The smoke, when you expose this food to the smoke, that smoke kills the germs that make food go bad. That make food go bad. I also say that smoke does what? It forms a coat. The smoke forms a coat, okay, on the food. The smoke forms a coat on the food. The smoke forms a coat on the food that prevents entry of germs. That prevents entry of what? Of germs. So that is how smoking can be used to do what? To preserve food. So that is well explained. If you have any question, you can ask learners, but that is how smoking can help in the preservation of food. I've explained which kind of foods can be preserved using smoke, and I've explained how that happens. So let us now discuss drying. Drying, B, we have drying. Drying is another method that can be used to do what? To preserve food. Drying, learners. Drying is used to preserve foods like grains, such as beans, such as maize, such as millet, such as peas, and so on. And other foods that can also be preserved by drying include foods like cassava, mushrooms, fish, meat, including vegetables. Okay? Including what? Including vegetables. So drying is used to preserve grains. Drying, you can write, drying is used to preserve grains, such as maize, you can dry maize after harvesting, learners, then expose it to the sun. After drying, that maize can be preserved for a very long time. All right, millet. The same thing applies to millet. Things like peas, foods like peas. Okay, other foods that can be dried include meat. You can also dry meat. Meat can be dried. You can dry fish. You can dry vegetables, learners, vegetables, and so on. So learners, these foods I've mentioned, for you to dry these foods, learners, you simply spread the food in the sun. You expose the food to sun rays. Okay? The foods to be dried are usually spread in the sun. The foods are usually spread in the sun. Just take the food outside. And those of you who live in rural areas, you must have observed after harvesting, in most cases, the grains are spread in the sun for some days. Okay? That is what we are saying, calling drying, when you spread it in the sun for some days. Now, that drying, learners, removes moisture from the food, removes water from the food, and stops the growth of organisms that cause food to rot. When you dry the food, then you remove water from the food. You remove the moisture from the food. And that is what helps the food to be preserved. Okay? So the foods are usually spread in the sun. So we can also put down another sentence that drying removes what? Moisture from the food. Drying removes moisture from the food. Removes moisture from the food. Removing moisture from the food or water from the food, learners, we normally call it dehydration. Food is dehydrated. Water is removed. Okay? So drying removes moisture from the food and stops the growth of organisms that cause food to rot. And does what? And stops the growth. Stops the growth of organisms. Organisms are small animals, the germs, that do what? That cause the food to rot. And learners have come in this class with examples of foods that have been dried. So learners, I have these are groundnuts, learners. Njugu, groundnuts. These groundnuts, when they were harvested, they had moisture. You could, when they are fresh, they have moisture. So the farmers, the one who grew these groundnuts, after harvesting, then he or she exposed the groundnuts to the sun, learners. Okay? The foods are usually spread in the sun. These groundnuts were spread in the sun and all water was removed from the groundnuts. That's why these groundnuts can be preserved for a very long period of time. Then I have, these are vegetables, learners. These ones, I bought them. These vegetables, I bought them when they were, these vegetables were fresh. I cut the vegetables into small pieces after washing. Then I exposed them to the sun. This one I did it myself, learners. I did not buy these ones. So these vegetables, learners, they can be preserved for more than 1 year. For more than 1 year. I used traditional method of drying. It's very simple. You just wash the vegetables, cut the vegetables into small pieces after washing, then expose the vegetables to the sun for about 4 days. And that will depend again on the intensity of the sun. So when you see all the moisture, all the water has been removed from the vegetables, then you can keep the vegetables in a container in your house. Right, learners? Then I have small fish. Most of you, some of you don't like it, but this is small fish. It's called omena fish. this fish finds its habitation in water. When the fish is harvested from water, it contains, this fish has water. When it's fresh, it has water. So the fishermen, when they want to sell this fish for a long period of time, because this fish is harvested from water. For example, Lake Victoria. Some of the omena come from Lake Victoria. And you see, currently I am holding this fish in Nairobi. So this fish is first harvested, then dried in the sun, spread in the sun. So this omena was spread in the sun, and you can see this omena can be preserved for a long period of time after being dried. Drying. These are the traditional methods of preserving food. And learners, as much as they are old methods, you can still use these methods today. So, and I want you learners to try at home. Okay, you can try the way I did. If you have some vegetables at home that you are not using, or after harvesting and you have plenty of these vegetables, please, you can try and dry them, and you will see that the vegetables can be preserved for a very long period of time. So these are examples of foods that can be dried. Drying removes moisture. Learners, I may say that drying is used to preserve grains such as maize, millet, peas. Other foods include meat, fish, cassava, etc. Vegetables. So those are two methods. We have discussed how many methods, learners? Two methods of preserving food. Two methods. That is the old methods. That will mark the end of our today's lesson, where we introduced the methods, the subtopic methods of preserving food. We've learned that the methods of preserving food can be classified into two: traditional methods and modern methods. In our today's lesson, we listed 4 traditional methods, and we have discussed 2 traditional methods: the smoking method and drying method. We saw that smoking is a method of preserving food using firewood. We've given examples of foods that can be smoked: maize, sorghum, meat, fish. We said the smoke, learners, the smoke contains substances that kill the germs that make the food go bad. We also learned that the smoke can form a coat around the food, and that coating prevents the entry of germs. Then we have seen how drying can be used to preserve food. We mentioned the foods that can be dried: maize, millet, peas, and other foods like meat, fish, vegetables, and so on. I have also noted that the foods are usually spread in the sun. All right. And then I've showed you examples of foods that have been dried: groundnuts, omena fish, and vegetables that I personally dried in the sun in Nairobi. These ones I went to a market in Nairobi, bought vegetables, then dried them. These are vegetables, learners. So that will mark the end of our today's lesson. And before, learners, we end the lesson, I need to give you homework. This is your revision questions for today. How does each of the following methods help to preserve food? A, smoking. B, drying. Learners, attempt the questions, but when answering the questions, please don't refer to the notes. Don't copy directly from the notes. No. Read the notes, then when answering the question, please close your exercise book and retrieve the answers from your memory. In case you find it difficult to retrieve the answers from your memory, it's no problem. Just go back to the notes read the notes once more, then go back to the question, try and answer the question from your memory. If you are unable to retrieve it the second time, no problem, learners. Go back to the notes, read the notes the third time, learners, then close the notes, go back and try and answer the question from your memory. If you are unable to answer the question from your memory the third time, please don't give up, please don't give up. Go back to the notes, read the notes once more, then close the notes, go back to the revision questions and try to answer the questions a fourth time. After answering fourth time, learners, you will notice that you are able to answer, say, smoking properly, but you are not able to do drying. What do? Please don't give up. Go back, read the notes once more, then go back. Because learners, that's how we learn. We learn through repetition. Don't just do it once and give up. No. Do it once, then twice, until you are able to answer the questions without referring to the notes. We normally say, quitters never do what? Never win. And winners do what? Never quit. So please don't stop until you are able to answer the questions for this topic, for this lesson and all the other lessons. Thank you for being attentive. In our next lesson, learners, we are going to discuss the other traditional methods of preserving food. That is, we have salting, we have use of honey, then there is use of ashes. These are the traditional methods that were used in the old days. Okay? Old methods. They are old methods, learners, but you can apply them today to preserve food. Bye-bye.
Thank you for choosing to study with us. For more information, you can call us on 0724 173845.